And it's great to be at the UW. You know, the UW is actually one of the top recipients of federal funding around research in the country. And so it's really wonderful to be here. And I don't know, do we have a lot of students in the audience? We did it here because we really wanted to get the students here, all right? and faculty, do we have some faculty here as well? Excellent, wonderful. Well, thank you for your incredible work and for continuing to do this groundbreaking work on so many levels. I'm thrilled to be back representing the 7th Congressional District. I got 329,000 votes in the last election, thanks to you, more votes than any single member of Congress anywhere in the country. So we really appreciate that. And so you won't be surprised to hear that the 7th Congressional District is one of the most engaged districts in the country. You all are very active, and I love it. Last year, we got 136,000 emails from you. We got 6,000 letters. We got 1,400 postcards and 10,000 calls. And just in the last 5 months, we have gotten 61,000 pieces of mail, letters, emails, phone calls from you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And I mean that sincerely, that it really matters that you are engaged, that you are paying attention. My last town hall that I did, I actually had a Washington Post reporter who was here covering me, and she left the town hall and she said, "Oh my God, your people know so much." And I said, "Yes, my people know so much." That is absolutely right. And you have written to me about everything, the top issues that come up. I call it Trump accountability as one big category. It's really, that's a big one. LGBTQ equality, immigration, climate change, ending the shutdown, because obviously that was big earlier this year, and then Medicare for all, which I'm going to talk about, and I thank you for your support on that. I wanted to make sure, before we get into the meat of the issues that we're going to discuss, that I just mentioned to you constituent services, because I know you see me a lot on national television, you see me talking about big issues, but I want you to know that our office spends a lot of energy, effort, and time on dealing with individual constituent issues that we can help you with. So please know that on anything related to a federal department, a federal issue, whether it's Veteran Services, Social Security, Medicare, all of these things, we can help you to navigate the bureaucracies if you're having a tough time. And so we served in the last cycle, we served over 1,500 individual constituents. We got $1.6 million back into the pockets of you all where it belonged. And it really is a wonderful privilege, tangible work that we can do. And I can't tell you how many people have said to me, I never thought a congressperson would be able to help me and would actually deal with my everyday issues, like how do I get my veterans benefits. So I want to just point out some of my staff who are here. They are truly remarkable and incredible. And if you have ever called the office, you know that they're also very empathetic. And that they really try to make sure that they're dealing with every single one of the constituents, including, by the way, anybody who didn't vote for me. And so Rachel Berkson is my district director. Alejandra just joined us, and we are so thrilled. She's constituent services. Liliana Ayala is in the back. She does environmental work and a lot of other pieces for us. Hamdi Mohammed runs all of my constituent services work, is fantastic. Zach Carsonson might be somewhere. Oh, right in front. Okay, Zach Carsonson is my director of outreach. And Raman Khanna. Is Raman here? Where is Raman? Oh, okay, he's working. But Raman Khanna does a lot of work with us around, there he is, around veterans issues. And also constituent services. So you have a team ready to serve you. It is your office. Please come and use it. This is my 13th in-person town hall since I took office. It is my 17th overall, so we also do teletown halls that have been very, very popular. We have thousands of people on those, and those are really great for folks who can't leave the home or want to participate. So please stay tuned for that and make sure you sign up. We are live streaming this tonight. We always live stream. Is there anyone for whom this is your first town hall that you've come to? All right, stand up and let's give them a hand. All right, way to go. Excellent. And is there anyone for whom this is the first time that you are in the same room as your Congress member? Stand up again. That's good too. Okay, excellent. So these are important to me because they are my opportunity to tell you what I'm working on, to hear from you, and to think together about how we build the kind of democracy that we want to see in this country. So thank you so much for being here. Your engagement matters. And I just can't say this strongly enough. And if you doubt that, let me tell you a little bit about what your engagement has meant over the last couple of years. You helped kill Trump Care. Trump Care does not exist because of people across this country. You helped end the Trump shutdown. You have stopped Trump's vanity wall, though we're still working on continuing to do that. You have stood up for trans rights, immigrant rights, against white nationalism, against Islamophobia, against anti-Semitism, and you helped elect the most progressive, the most diverse House of Representatives in the history of this country. And I just have to say thank you for the privilege of serving you. I am not only the first South Asian American woman ever elected to the House, I am the first person of color that Democrats in Washington have ever sent to Congress. I am one of only 14 immigrants out of 535 members of Congress. And at this moment in time, it is so incredibly important for this set of voices, and when I say that, I really mean this set of voices. I mean the people in the district, because when I am in a Judiciary Committee hearing, when I am talking about something that is of critical importance to this district, like LGBTQ equality, or immigrant rights, or health care, or the budget, and stopping wars, unnecessary wars, and reducing our military budget, I think of you. And you give me the ability to say what I say because I believe the district is with me. So I really want to thank you for that. I serve now on the Judiciary Committee. We are going to talk about that tonight. I know we are. I know that. How many of you came to the town hall because you want to talk about what you heard today from Robert Muller? Okay, so we're going to get to that, I promise. I also serve on the Education and Labor Committee, which is very, very important. I'm on the Higher Ed Committee. As you know, I've been pushing for free college and debt cancellation for our young people across this country. I think that's critically important, but also to make sure that we're investing in targeted approaches that help to support education for everybody. Labor, obviously, I'm a big labor supporter. We just introduced, I'm an original co-sponsor of the PRO Act, which is really encouraging collective bargaining and the right for workers to be able to organize. I know there's actually right now happening the contract negotiations for the graduate students here at the University of Washington, and I hope that comes to a successful conclusion because I think it is very important to have that kind of representation. I'm also on the Budget Committee. And then on top of all of those, we have subcommittees for those. I'm also the co-chair, recently elected co-chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus. And I used to say we're the largest values-based caucus in the House, but I just heard that the New Dems have 3 more members than we do, so we're going to have to do a little bit of work here. But we represent 40% of the members of the Democratic caucus, and we have really been working on how we leverage the power of progressives in the House to make sure that the issues that we feel so strongly about are represented. And so we did that earlier this year, negotiating with Speaker Nancy Pelosi, who I think is really doing a fantastic job in a very difficult circumstance. We were able to use our power as progressives to get proportional representation of progressives on the key committees. So when you watch Financial Services and you see Ayanna Pressley and Katie Porter and new members of the Progressive Caucus, new members of the House of Representatives on those #1 committees, you can thank, in part, the Congressional Progressive Caucus for negotiating for the first time for proportional representation of progressives on appropriations, ways and means, financial services, and one other that I'm forgetting in this very moment. But typically not been something that freshman members have gotten, but we pushed for that. We also were able to negotiate for more progressives in leadership, so we have some fantastic members of Congress from the Progressive Caucus in leadership, which helps us to get some of the things that you will hear about in a moment. And then you may have seen and heard that I was able to negotiate with the Speaker for the first ever Medicare for All hearings in the House of Representatives, and it was really fantastic. And what does it mean to have a majority? Let me just run through some of what we have been able to do in 4.5 months of a Democratic majority in the House. 2 gun control measures passed, background checks and closing the Charleston loophole. We haven't had a gun control hearing for 7 years. So 2 of those bills that are passed. We have more to do, but that's huge. Also, paycheck fairness. We passed the Paycheck Fairness Act on the House floor. Using the Progressive Caucus's leverage, we pushed the Yemen War Powers resolution to a successful conclusion in both the House and the Senate, which is incredibly important to end U.S. engagement in the Saudi-backed war in Yemen that has killed hundreds of thousands of people. And the president has refused to sign a bipartisan War Powers Resolution Act that was passed in both the House and the Senate, but we are continuing to work with our Senate colleagues to figure out how we bring that up again and get the president to sign this. We also passed H.R. 1, which is our For the People Act, which was a huge and sweeping bill to address money in politics. And I was able to get a number of key amendments into that bill, including that every president must produce their business and their personal tax returns have to be disclosed to everyone. We also, 2 weeks ago, passed the Equality Act, finally providing LGBTQ protections, civil rights protections to our LGBTQ community. And you may have seen the video of me talking about my gender nonconforming child who just graduated from college 2 days ago. And I am so proud of them and also of our communities, LGBTQ communities across the country. I just want you to know, I know how difficult this is. You are seen, you are heard, we will fight for you. And then last week, I played a key negotiating role on passing the Dream and Promise Act, which will finally bring permanent relief to 2.1 million people across this country, both our dreamers and our temporary protected status folks across the country with a real path to citizenship. That will come to the House floor. It was a 12-hour hearing, very, very difficult, 18 Republican amendments that sought to destroy the bill. And I was just so proud because of all the work we had done before and with advocates and also with committee members, we were able to hold every single Democrat on every single amendment, bad amendment that came forward. So that bill will go to the floor, I think, on June 4th, and hopefully you will see the House of Representatives pass the most progressive yet Dream and Promise Act. So Medicare for All, just have to talk about it. I am so proud to be leading on this issue, 125 plus page plan for how we transition to a single payer system in this country. It is a serious plan. We have just added 4 more co-sponsors, including the chair of the Budget Committee. So we are now up to 112, and I will have a couple more announcements next week on a few more key leadership people that will be co-sponsoring the bill. We have had now a fantastic hearing in the Rules Committee. If you care about this issue and you did not watch the Rules Committee hearing, go back and find it. Make sure you watch Adi Barkan's testimony at the very beginning. Adi Barkan is an incredible activist who came and testified. He has ALS and very little time left to live, and he speaks through a computer. It's a computer-generated voice because he cannot speak, but he's still a phenomenal activist. And his testimony just made it so clear why we must transition from a profit-based system to a patient-centered healthcare system where every single person in this country has healthcare. And anybody who says it's not possible just has to look at all the other peer countries around the world that have universal healthcare, and then look at the United States of America, the richest country in the world. We spend 18.5% of our GDP on healthcare costs, and yet we have the highest infant mortality rates, the highest maternal mortality rates, and we are the only peer country of our other countries where life expectancy is going down and not up. So what does Medicare for All get for you? It gets comprehensive care, preventive care, dental, mental health, vision, all of the care you need, no copays, premiums, or deductibles, and ultimately, you will be able to, through all of that, you actually get to see not just the same hospitals and doctors you have. We're not taking over the system. Don't believe any of those lies. Same existing system, except you have more choice because no doctor or hospital is out of network, which means no surprise billings of $2,000, $10,000, $20,000 for some operation that you had to get at an out-of-network hospital. And you will not have to deal with the insurance companies and the pharmaceutical drug manufacturers that are profiting off of our illnesses today. This will be the government providing guaranteed health insurance so that every single person in this country is in and can get the care they need when they get sick. And I am going to fight for this, and I believe we are going to get it. We may not get it right away. This is a big deal, right? And a lot of people are going to call me socialist and all those things. Whenever somebody says that to me, I say, Teddy Roosevelt was called a socialist in 1910 when he proposed some of the systems that are the most popular. Harry Truman, Lyndon Johnson were all called socialists when they proposed Medicare and Social Security, now two of the most popular programs that we have. My belief is I'm not looking to buy my computer or my coffee from the government. I am looking to have this basic concept of health insurance provided for everybody by the government, motivated by health and making sure people are well and can see the doctor, and not by profit. So keep your eyes tuned on Medicare for All, but it is really going gangbusters and has been wonderful, really great momentum. All right. So now we're at the topic that everyone wants to talk about, and that is the accountability and oversight. And, I am on the Judiciary Committee today. How many of you watched Robert Mueller's statement today on television? There are three things that I think are really important from that pivotal statement. And it's not new, it's all in the report. I have read the report 3 times, from front to back. If you look at my copy, it is marked up everywhere. It has little sticky notes, it's underlined, it's highlighted. I have lots and lots of notes. I have prepared from that report for every witness that has refused to testify before us. So I have done days of preparation for every one of those witnesses that has been blocked from testifying by this president and this White House in ongoing acts of obstruction. So 3 things that Mueller said that I want to call your attention to. Number 1, Russian intelligence coordinated severe attacks on our election systems. And they benefited Donald Trump as president. And it is a serious threat that we must address before we have our next elections. Number 2, he restated again, this is the 3rd time, he did not exonerate the president of committing a crime. He did not exonerate the president of committing a crime. What he said very clearly is that there is an Office of Legal Counsel opinion. These opinions exist, they are taken to court, there are a lot of legal scholars that disagree with those opinions. They're taken to court and they're challenged regularly. This opinion has not been challenged as yet because we haven't had a president that we've needed to challenge it on. that says that a sitting president cannot be indicted of a crime. Robert Mueller is a company guy. He decided to follow that existing OLC opinion, and therefore, what he did is he did the investigation, he took all the evidence, and he laid it out in the report with 10 potential obstruction of justice charges in the report. If you read volume 2, this is where all of this is. And then he said, the only way that you can hold a president accountable is according to the Constitution through Congress, Article 1 powers. We're not just a co-equal branch of government. We are Article 1. We are the first of all the articles. So he said, number 3 point, Congress, I'm turning it over to you. It's like he was throwing the football down the field, except somebody intercepted it in the middle. And it was Bill Barr, the Attorney General, who instead of releasing the report immediately, he did release most of the report eventually, though we still have not gotten the unredacted version. We still have not gotten the underlying information. But Bill Barr went in and intercepted that report and then spun it as something else that it did not say. And today on CNN, as I was watching, there was a really great little clip where they juxtaposed what Robert Mueller said today with what Bill Barr said. And Bill Barr lied. He lied about a lot of things, but he lied about what was in the report. And so it is critically important that Robert Mueller come and testify to us, even if he doesn't say anything more than was in the report, because we need the American people to see exactly what he said. And if you haven't read the report, I really recommend you read it. It is a phenomenal document on so many levels, phenomenally scary. And so I have called for us to start an impeachment inquiry. I have not done that lightly. I have not done that lightly. I am not looking to do this. However, it is absolutely impossible for anybody to read that report and believe that we should not do a formal inquiry. Now, understand that an inquiry is different than impeaching the president, okay? Everybody understands that? We start an inquiry, it allows us to use those Article 1 powers to make sure we get the information that we should have been getting with a subpoena, frankly. We have legally authorized subpoenas that have been thwarted by this president. We have called witnesses forward who are compelled to testify before us, and they have been thwarted by this president. Don McGahn was going to come and testify before us until the night before. And then the president called and said, the White House called him and said, we do not want you to testify. And he was somewhat between a rock and a hard place because he was working for the White House. He made that choice. Hope Hicks has been called to come and testify before us. Let's see what she does. I don't think it's an existential crisis. I think it's about following the law, if anybody read the New York Times report. So this is the situation that we're in. And so we are doing all the work that we can to make sure that we hold the hearings, and we will use all the means at our disposal, and that includes something called inherent contempt. Speaker Pelosi has said that is not off the table. We are looking at whether we can use inherent contempt. We will be bringing our contempt citations to the floor for a vote. You will see that happen in the next several weeks. And so we will pursue all of these avenues. Over half of the Judiciary Committee Democrats have called for opening an impeachment inquiry, because we are on judiciary and we are consistently dealing with these issues day in and day out. We have read the report deeply. We understand exactly what is at stake. Not everybody in the caucus is there yet. So that is why Speaker Pelosi has a different role, and she has been trying to figure out exactly how we move this forward. But I do think that the more the president obstructs justice in an ongoing way, the more certain we are going to be headed in the direction that I think many of us have already come out for. and that is the impeachment inquiry. Let's follow the facts, let's get the facts, let's follow the facts, and then let's see where that takes us. To me, this person that is in the White House has lied, has committed crimes, and should not be in the White House. But we need more information before that can happen. And so that is the process that we're in. Remember that in the end, impeachment has to succeed in both the House and in the Senate. And we don't have all the information yet to be able to fully determine the extent of the crimes that he has committed. So this is a really, really difficult time, and I know you all have a lot of questions and a lot of thoughts, and I want to make sure we get to that. But I do want to say one last thing, which is there are a lot of considerations here about how we go forward. I was elected to uphold the Constitution. That's what you elected me to do. That's what I go to bed with every night, and that's what I wake up with every morning. And it weighs on me really heavily. And I do think that we are in one of the most serious moments that I can remember in terms of our Constitution and the future of our democracy. And I'm not exaggerating when I say that one of the differences between a dictatorship and a democracy is checks and balances. And we have a system that was designed to make sure that there are three co-equal branches of government that can exert oversight over each other, that there can be accountability so that you don't have power concentrated in the hands of one person or very few people. That was the idea behind this democracy in the Constitution as it's constructed. And therefore, when you have one branch of government who says, no subpoena, we're not complying with any subpoenas, we're not complying with any witnesses, we're not going to provide you with any information, it isn't just about something that's sort of far off and theoretical. It's about what happens if this administration goes to war with Iran without congressional approval and refuses to give us any information. What happens when, as they are stripping health care from Americans across the country, they refuse to give us any information? What happens if they refuse to give us information about children who are being detained? 5 children have died in 5 months in DHS custody. We just opened an investigation thanks to me and Jerry Nadler and Zoe Lofgren. For 10 years, no children died in DHS custody. And now in 5 months, 5 children have died. We are accountable. We have to be accountable. And we have to hold this administration accountable. So thank you all so much. Looking forward to your questions, and thank you for letting me represent you very much.
I'm from the Ahmadiyya Muslim community. Remember you coming to our Stop the Crisis event. I have invitations for you again. And I'm hoping that you'll come to our annual convention. It's crisis. The time now is critical. We need to work for world peace. And freedom of religion is part of that peace. My son delivers a request that you file for impeachment inquiry. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Let me just say one other thing we're working on is repealing the Muslim ban. So there is a bill around that, and we are working very hard on that. Thank you.
Hi, Congresswoman. My name is Anamik. I'm a freshman here at UW. My family's from Chennai, so it means a lot to have representation from you. And I was just going to ask if you had any advice for first-time voters. I turned 18 last year, so I'll be voting. I voted in the midterms, but I'll be voting in my first presidential election. And so I was just wondering if you had any advice.
Yes. Well, congratulations. Let's give it up for our first-time voter. That's fantastic. And I assume you're all registered. Yeah. But I think the biggest advice I have is really research the positions, ask the candidates what they believe in, and push people to get an answer and make sure that you watch them say what they're saying and see if you believe them. I really do think that in the end, we need people who are authentic about who they are. There may be things that people disagree with me on, but hopefully we can always talk about it, and I can explain why I voted a certain way, and I can be responsive to constituents. And I think we need more people in office who really use elected office to lead and not to follow. But I think you just look for the issues that you care about and then do your research and engage, get involved in a campaign, volunteer, get your friends out. It really is, democracy is an incredible thing if we can make it work so that everybody really takes it as seriously as you are. So that's wonderful.
Hi, my name is Kirsten, and I'm a UW alum and live in the neighborhood. If I can squeeze in two. One is speaking to urgency. It feels like the president and his administration are obstructing faster than we're responding and holding accountable. And I want to trust that the right actions are being taken, but is there anything you can share us, maybe behind the scenes, or that lets us know that patients will be rewarded? And then secondly, regarding Russians' interference and potential other foreign actors, what things can we see coming forward to help ensure that our elections are free and fair?
Thank you for both those questions. If I gave you what was behind the scenes, they would be in front of the scenes. But I will just tell you, I get it. I mean, I am impatient. I feel frustrated by the complete lack of regard for any mores or convention from this president. I was telling Angelina that I met with a group of law students the other day, and I said, if you were to reimagine the Constitution, knowing what you know now about who can make it into office, what would you put in place so that we could really make sure that we hold anybody accountable? And so I just want you to know that it is being taken, the urgency is being taken very seriously. And I think even the conversations that are happening on the floor, they're not between members. Everyone is taking this very, very seriously. And we really are trying to make sure we walk through all the steps we need to walk through so that we know that taking it seriously is also taking the right amount of time over each thing, going through the courts. I mean, we got 2 great court decisions last week where the Trump administration tried to claim that they didn't have to do certain things. Their accounting firm, the Mazars case, and then another one where the court said, no, you have to provide this information to Congress. So it will take a little bit more time, I think, than we would like. And I do worry that the stakes are very high. So I don't have, I don't have the perfect wrapped up box to give you, but I can tell you that the urgency is felt. It is being taken very seriously. More and more of us have called for an impeachment inquiry. I'm not the only one. There are, I think now it's up to 50 actually members of Congress. This morning it was 40 after Robert Mueller gave a statement. Many more joined that call. So it's going to take a little bit of time. We are taking it very seriously. And what was the other thing? Oh, about what we're doing around interference in our elections. So we passed H.R. 1, which has a lot of stuff in it that would help protect our election security. When Jeff Sessions was before me as Attorney General in the Judiciary Committee, this was the question I asked him about. He said, of course we're going to protect our elections, but in fact the administration has done nothing to shore up all of our election security and systems across the country. So this is, I think Robert Mueller has put some new energy into this. We are being blocked by the Senate. Mitch McConnell has declared himself as the Grim Reaper. The Senate is the graveyard where all good things go to die. And so we are in a situation where we are just going to have to continue to organize, not just in districts like mine where I'm with you on a lot of these things, but in places where you may have family or friends who need to understand the seriousness of what we're facing today.
Okay, I'd like to welcome the next 4 to the mics. They are number 706001, 706056, 706025, and 706004.
All right, thank you for being here. Thank you so much for all you do to make us proud.
Thank you.
And for, in general, I want to say thank you for reading the Mueller report 3 times. I received my copy a few days ago, and it sits on my desk waiting for a chunk of about 12 hours to just show up. So I'm curious whether you believe that Nancy Pelosi has read the full report, and I'm also wondering what, it seems to be a high hurdle to read that whole thing. What can we do to accelerate, help people get there quicker?
I assume the speaker has read it, though I haven't asked her that. There is a Washington Post article where they asked members of Congress if they've read the report, so you can go on there and see what people have said. I do think it's really, really important. And honestly, I mean, maybe I'm a nerd, but I found it fascinating. It was like a novel. You couldn't make this stuff up. And really important for people to understand exactly how power has been abused. We did a reading of the entire Mueller report that Mary Gay Scanlon, our vice chair of the Judiciary Committee, sort of spearheaded. And so each one of us went in, and it went on for almost 24 hours. It was broadcast on C-SPAN. I know that there are CNN hosts who are doing different readings, but this is why I think it's so important for Mueller to come and testify, not because I think he's going to give us more information than what's in the report. He clearly said today, what's in the report is in the report, but because every television will be tuned to every word he says. And so we can actually ask him to elucidate, in the words of the report, what is in the report, so that it becomes very clear that Bill Barr is lying, that Trump is lying about what is in the report, and so that Americans understand those 10 points that they read. There are some very key, and the New York Times has an annotated version of the report where they actually sort of point out some of the key sections, so that's another place that people can go to read if you don't want to read the whole thing, or read the executive summaries if you don't want to read the whole report. But this is the problem. If we don't have witnesses come and testify before us, then it's hard in this day and age to get this information out. So we are also thinking about doing teach-ins across the country. So Jamie Raskin has a whole group of legal scholars across the country that could participate with members of Congress in teach-ins so that we could get people to come. But the problem is you all are engaged already. That's part of the reason you came. So how do we reach the people that don't come to the town halls or the teach-ins? And I'm open to any ideas that you have, creative ideas on how we do that. Very important. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for your comments about starting the impeachment inquiry. I want to talk today about something that Speaker Pelosi said today, that we need an ironclad case to take to the Republican Senate, and respectfully, I disagree. If you waited for the Senate Republican approval to take any action, you will never act. People who say impeachment is bad politics should look up Nixon's approval ratings. They were strong until the very end. Please do not wait for public opinion to change, to shift, to begin the proceedings. Start the investigation now. Make the case to the public. You will change their minds. This is your job, and I just want to say thank you so much. I'm encouraging you, please go out and do this. Be our voice, be our activist in the halls of Congress. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that what she's probably talking about is that any impeachment proceedings ultimately have to go to the Senate, right? They start in the House and then they have to go to the Senate. But the reason I have called for an impeachment inquiry is, number one, it is my constitutional duty to stand up for the Constitution. And I understand that there are elections coming up, and people say, aren't you worried about 2020? And I say, sure, but what I'm more worried about is our Constitution and our democracy. And so I think we have to do our job. Now, there are different ways to go about it. I mean, the court cases are important. We are continuing to have hearings, whether we call them impeachment hearings or not. Opening a formal impeachment proceeding, what it does is it gives us a little bit more gravitas to use those Article I powers to get people to testify if he continues to block us. When the OLC opinion came out around Don McGahn, saying that he didn't need to come and testify because he's a senior advisor to the president and therefore he has complete immunity. That is actually the same thing that George W. Bush claimed when Harriet Miers was called to testify in 2007. It went to the court said, you're crazy, there's no legal precedent for this at all. Really good judicial decision that is worth also reading, at least pieces of it. And And Bush did not appeal it. Bush allowed Harriet Miers to come and testify. This president is going to appeal everything with the hopes that it gets to the Supreme Court and maybe he gets his Supreme Court that he's always wanted. So this is it's a real problem to just focus on one methodology, which is why I support opening an impeachment inquiry. I also support continuing with the court cases. Whether or not we open an impeachment inquiry, we are doing serious hearings in the Judiciary Committee, and you will see them coming forward. And if these witnesses don't come and testify, we will have law professors come and testify. Over 1,000 former prosecutors have written and said these are impeachable offenses, that this president would have been indicted if he was not being held to this OLC standard. So this is serious stuff, and I hear you, and I understand the frustration, and I will continue to advocate hard in all the ways, publicly and privately, that I do, to make sure that we get this information out to the American public. When the Watergate hearing started, 19% of the American public thought that Nixon should be impeached. By the end of those hearings, it was so certain that he resigned before he was impeached. So we have to use these platforms to lead. We cannot just follow. That's what I said earlier to the question about what kinds of people do we need in office. We can't just follow. We have to lead. And we have to do it with conviction based on what we really believe is right and not just based on sort of the next election that's coming up.
I have a grandmother who came from France. I have a grandfather who came from the Netherlands. And I have other ancestors who came on the Mayflower. We're all immigrants. And we need to understand this Constitution that we have, our forefathers so brilliantly put together. And I think our problem is we don't have enough people going to civics classes. We don't understand our Constitution, and it's obviously that one person in an important role has not read it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so please come forward, number 706054, 706065, 706034, and 706007.
Okay. My name is John. I'm with Students for a National Healthcare Program at UW School of Medicine, as well as with PNHP in Western Washington.
Yay.
We represent over 20,000 physicians and medical students across the nation. And I just want to say that all of us, we are fully behind your single-payer Medicare for All bill. We fully support it. And I just want to make a plea to you to not change this bill. There's certain aspects of Bernie's bill which could undermine the Medicare for All single-payer movement. And if Bernie's bill gains traction, we're worried about changes to your bill that could, to match Bernie's bill. So please just to stay the course and keep your bill. And I also want to ask, there's lots of individuals who are not explicitly covered under Medicare for All, which includes undocumented individuals, and it doesn't explicitly address disparities in healthcare with African Americans or with Latinx communities. And I just wanted to ask you if you could, include some provisions or other bills that could help address some of the disparities.
Thank you. Actually, everybody is in and nobody's out in my bill. Now, I don't want it to be an immigration bill. I want it to be a healthcare bill. So we leave a definition of resident up to the secretary. But everything that we have done has been, and it's why immigrant rights groups are supporting my bill this time around, and I'm very grateful for all their work to really craft it in a way that allows us to keep the focus on healthcare. Dr., oh my gosh, I just went blank on his name, but wonderful emergency room doctor, PNHP. Yes, Farzad testified about this and was so eloquent where he said, we are paying more to cover undocumented immigrants when they come into the emergency rooms versus if we just were to actually cover them for everything. So I don't think you have to worry about that given my background on immigration issues. And then in terms of health disparities, I mean, the biggest issue, I talk about Medicare for All as a racial equity issue because if you look at healthcare across this country, everyone is suffering. But of course, folks of color are disproportionately affected by the lack of preventive care, by the lack of all of these other, pieces that are not covered today in healthcare, and the high costs of pharmaceutical drugs. So it is absolutely addressed in the core concept of providing healthcare for everyone. I have a different bill called the HEAL Act that is specifically around healthcare for undocumented folks. And then we also have a bunch of other bills that address health disparities. We can't do everything in one bill. This one is really about how do we provide health care for every single person. And believe me, folks of color will deeply benefit from a single-payer healthcare system.
Hi. Hi. First, I'd like to thank you for having the town hall here on campus so students can attend.
Yes.
And my question is about the housing affordability crisis. So as I understand, housing policy has classically been dealt with more at a local level. Do you think it's time for the federal government to step up and take a bigger role in tackling this crisis that we see not only in Seattle, but in many cities in most states in the United States?
Yeah, it's such an important question, and we're so glad to do it on campus, by the way. We'll come back. 500,000 people across this country are experiencing homelessness today. 500,000 people. And 16,000 of them are children, 35,000 veterans. I mean, this is a massive crisis in cities across the country, not just in Seattle. And here in Washington State, we have 22,000 plus who are experiencing homelessness. The federal government's role has traditionally been mainly money, and decades of austerity spending have really cut back on investments into housing. And so this is a budgetary issue at the federal government, for sure. We're spending so much on wars and military, $733 billion military defense budget that's been proposed that I have opposed. And yet we're not spending on our domestic infrastructure needs, which includes things like housing infrastructure. So we do that traditionally through the Housing Trust Fund. We do have an Ending Homelessness Act that is a top priority of Democrats this year. And it would put, I think it's $13 billion into ending homelessness, and that's everything from more affordable housing units to Section 8 vouchers, all of those other kinds of supports that we have for people so that they can actually afford housing wherever they are. In addition, we have to address mental health, and that is a big driver of homelessness as well. And so that's another piece through a separate set of legislation that we're hoping to be able to pass around opioids and other things. I was able to get $10 million into this year's 2020 fiscal appropriations bill that just passed out of committee to expand our law enforcement assisted diversion program that started here in Seattle across the country and really help provide supports to people who are experiencing addiction to opioids or other things. And then finally, we're trying to pass the $15 minimum wage bill in ed and labor, and we had a markup on it already. We hope to bring it to the floor soon because we also need to lift wages on the bottom. So it's like a multifaceted issue that the federal government engages in on every single level. But just in terms of pure housing dollars, we have got to invest more in affordable housing, in rental vouchers for those who need it, in order to really address it at the federal level. At the local level, we have also tried to engage using our office as a place to bring people together to really talk about appropriate responses for addressing housing and homelessness. So we're going to continue to do that. I just hired somebody as my senior counsel who was the director of the Georgetown Center on Law and Poverty and did a lot of work on homelessness and housing. So I'm really excited to get her into the office and see if there are other things that we can be doing at the federal level. Thank you.
I want to thank you for co-sponsoring Barbara Lee's bill HR 1274, which is the repeal of the authorization for the use of military force that was passed in 2001 and then an amendment in 2002. I'm concerned that it's still not visible. It seems like the larger domestic issues are in the forefront, and they should get get press coverage, et cetera. But the connection between the military budget and our 18 years now of war that no one talks about, the money that is taken away from domestic programs in killing people, I'm wondering what we could do to make it more visible, to make that connection.
It's a bit of a lonely fight. You know, it was difficult to, I led the opposition to the spending caps deal because of the $733 billion in military defense spending. My proposal was that we would actually increase non-defense, first of all, that we try to cut military spending. It became very clear that that wasn't going to happen, and part of it is because all those defense projects are in districts across the country providing jobs. If you could cut that and put it into transportation infrastructure, which also would provide jobs across the country, maybe that's something we need to be thinking about and working towards. But I have now realized, being in Congress, that even people that I think would speak out against that sort of don't want to, because it means a lot of job loss for them in their districts. So when we realized we couldn't do that, the next idea I had was to try to bring non-defense discretionary spending in line with defense spending. Because right now, $733 billion is what's being proposed for defense spending. Non-defense discretionary spending is almost $100 billion less. And so if we could have just increased non-defense discretionary by $40 billion, we would have actually been at the same level that we were at in 2005, where the two were the same. This is very wonky, but it's kind of important. Back in 2001, non-defense discretionary spending was actually greater than defense spending. 2001 and the wars that followed basically boosted defense spending up to the levels that we're at, and in exchange, what happened is non-defense discretionary started going down. Now, Senator Murray did an important thing where she said we have to have parity increases in defense and non-defense discretionary spending, but that doesn't get us to the same level. That only makes sure that if you're increasing defense by a certain amount, you increase non-defense, but you're not lowering the difference between the two. You're not reversing the decades of austerity that have led us to the situation that we're in. So it's a very important issue, but we need a bigger movement around military spending in this country and how we actually put the resources that we have into taking care of our troops. I mean, our troops should not be sent to war, endless wars that we should not be engaged in. And they certainly should get health care and mental health care, and we should make sure that their families are taken care of. Like, national security should be also taking care of our folks here, including our troops. So I think there's just a lot of work we have to do, and Barbara Lee's been great. The authorization of use of military force is getting more attention right now because of Iran. And the indications from John Bolton that he wants to actually use the 2001 AUMF as the justification for going to war in Iran and somehow make some weird connection between Al-Qaeda and Iran and 2001, it doesn't make any sense. So I have deep concerns about that, and I think you will hear more about it. And we have gotten into some of the appropriate budgets, no money for a war in Iran or a war in Yemen. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. Thank you so much, Representative Jayapal, for coming. First of all, especially like the person before me said, the fact that you're at campus. I'm a grad student at the School of Social Work, and so I really appreciate that you're here. My question is not about policies in particular, but you're just truly amazing in the fact that you're doing so much. How do you keep going? How do you have that hope? Like, honestly, my question is, how do you have that hope, especially right now in our political climate with everything going on with homelessness, when it comes to lack of access to education, employment, issues regarding folks with disabilities, people of color, folks in the LGBTQ plus community. How do you do it? Especially for me being in social work, it's very hard for me to, although I love helping people, it's still so hard to be able to instill that hope with everything going on.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for doing what you're doing and really for caring about society. I love the School of Social Work. We had interns from MSWs that were at One America for years. I did the graduation keynote years and years ago at the School of Social Work, and I just loved it. I think that a couple things. I think what keeps me going, first of all, is you. I mean, people around the country who desperately want to see our country live up to its potential and are willing to engage and organize and make a difference. And the people that I have worked with for so long are people who are in such incredibly vulnerable situations. And so anytime I get depressed, which does happen from time to time, I think about some of those women in particular, women of color, immigrant women, undocumented women, refugees, asylees, people who had so much turmoil in their lives and yet came forward and advocated for themselves, for their communities, made these treacherous journeys across deserts with no shoes on. And I think, well, what do I have to complain about, really? I mean, it is true, And so that's one thing. And I bring those people into the room with me. People ask me how I sit through the Judiciary Committee hearings, which are so horrible, and the things that people say, and just horrible, and directed at people like me, us, immigrants. And I bring people into the room with me. I literally think about a group of people for whom what I say will matter. And I hold them in my head as I say what I'm saying. I don't know that I do it consciously anymore. I think it just sort of happens now. And then finally, I think I have this theory about life, which is that when you see tremendous backlash like we're seeing today, whether it's the xenophobia, the anti-immigrant hatred, the white nationalism, the white supremacy, that it's because we have actually taken steps forward, that those forces that were underground have been scared into the open. And now we've shone a light on those dark forces that were underground. Now they're up in front. And so it feels like we're taking a step back. But that is only happening because we made progress, because we elected a black man to be president of the United States, because we have more folks of color, more women of color, more firsts elected than ever before. And there is this fear now that, oh my gosh, we're making progress on some of these things. And so it's unearthing some racism that was there. I knew it was there, but a lot of people seem to think it wasn't there. It's there, and we have to deal with it. It's institutionalized. And so for me, it's not a bad thing. It's horrible to deal with, but if we think about it in that way, that it's now been exposed and we now can see it clearly and we know what we have to do to fight it. We all have to be out there with love, with generosity, putting ourselves out as much as we can, because this is the only life as it is, whether you believe in reincarnation or not. This is this life, and we have to do everything we can to make a difference in this life.
Okay, so I'd like to welcome number 706059, 706020, 706005, and 706068. Please. Would you like
water? Okay. Thank you very much for inviting us and being here. And I'm so happy this is my first town hall meeting in Washington. I'm an advocate for women and children from last 10 years in US. I've been fighting for policies and all this kind of engagement. I was already engaged. So when I found her in One America's meeting there, and I was so impressed as the one first Asian, here in the United States and working so hard. And I decided to get engaged in this. My question here is, we are going through a big constitutional crisis at the moment. And how can you keep our Constitution alive, which has been ruined by our administration, Trump administration, and what are your plannings, your house is planning for our safety?
Thank you. Thank you for the question. I think it's really what I've said. It requires everybody in the room being engaged, being out there organizing, not agonizing, organizing, and then for us to use our platforms to lead, to hold these inquiries, to hold accountability, to have hearings, to have investigations, to get out in front of the public exactly what this administration is doing. And it's only possible with all of us. So thank you for everything that you do. Yeah.
Good evening. Thank you for being here and for all the work that you do. And I was one of the first attorneys in working with Wyden, the Washington Immigration Defense.
Oh, great, yeah.
And we were able to get a woman bonded out and reunited with her child. And my question is, will this administration ever be held accountable for what they did at the border and family separation and all the children that are separated?
I was the first member of Congress to go into a federal prison and speak to the families who were separated. And I think of their voices and their cries and their tears. Hamdi was with me, Rachel was with me. I don't go to sleep at night without thinking about their stories. And if you've seen me in judiciary, I'm constantly raising these issues. We will have another hearing on family separation. We already had one. We will have another one. More and more information is coming out that it wasn't even just those 3,000. There were actually another 1,300 on top of those 3,000 that were separated that nobody ever knew about. We are being told that these families cannot be reunited because they'd never kept track. We have questioned people who made it very clear that they were told about the irreversible damage that would be done to these children by separating them from their parents, and they didn't care. They didn't do anything about it. And so how do you really hold somebody accountable for what has happened? I don't really know the answer to that. I have said that these families should be given the ability to stay in the United States, be reunited and be able to stay here. But I think that the bigger question is, what kind of a country are we that we would allow a person who does this to be in the White House? And what has happened, in my view, is an impeachable offense, by the way. I mean, I think it is a horrific, horrific act. So we are continuing to push to get information. The courts are being incredibly, the courts are sort of our last measure, and he's destroying that too by appointing all these people who shouldn't be there. And so all I can tell you is we're continuing to push hard on this. We will continue to do that. I am trying to restrict the money that we give to DHS, to ICE and Customs and Border Patrol, because I don't think they should be getting money to detain kids in cages. I just think that's wrong. So I'm also working on that, and we hope to push to reduce the number of beds for detention to the 2016 levels, and I just reintroduced my Dignity for Detained Immigrants bill, which dramatically transforms the detention system, and so we're going to be looking for co-sponsors for that as well, so on numerous fronts.
And I just want to put a little plug in for the Lymphedema Treatment Act. I'm one of the advocates on that. Thank you for your work.
Thank you.
So I think these are going to be our last round of questions, unfortunately. I'd like to welcome number 706070, 706010, 706017, and 706031.
And if they left, you can call some more.
Okay, so how about 706046, 706055, 706036, and 706041.
Oh, hi, Pop.
Hi, I'm an immigrant myself, and last year I hosted a Vietnamese exchange student, and this This is my second town hall with you, and I dragged him to one at the hall at Fauntleroy in West Seattle.
Oh, yeah.
And he was a very introverted, shy young man. And he never said it, but I could tell that he was really moved to meet or see an Asian immigrant who came here around the same age he was, become a congresswoman. It really affected him. But my question is about other immigrants. Yesterday I was listening to NPR and I was reduced to tears over a story about a man and a woman, one in Arizona, one in Texas, who are facing jail time for giving water and food and transportation to people who had gotten across the border.
Yeah.
And one, I think, is looking at 20 years for helping people that way. And they weren't smugglers, they were just good Samaritans who couldn't bear to see people dying in the desert.
Yeah, it's a horrible, thank you, by the way, for what you said. And I think, you know, sometimes people think diversity is nice just because the pictures look better, but it's actually because we bring real ideas to the table around the affected communities that we know so well, and also that we change the potential futures of how people think about their lives, you know. And so I hope that young man thinks about his life differently and what's possible for an immigrant by seeing one in office. This is horrible what Arizona is doing. You know, I remember 10 years ago when I went on buses with One America and slept in the church basements in Arizona protesting SB 1070, which again criminalized so many things, being undocumented, but also criminalized the ability for people to help people, which is what they're using now. And so this is a really big deal. I think that, you know, we have to change the politics in Arizona. We have to not allow for these states to be able to pass these kinds of anti-immigrant laws. Most of the time they fail. But then you have Trump, who, you know, is willing to pardon Joe Arpaio. And so we then go backwards a little bit, and, you know, and we just have to continue to work on it. I don't think they will. I mean, hopefully, I heard that there's a big legal defense fund that's coming to support these folks who are ending up in this situation, but it is a terrible situation. Thank you.
Hello, thank you. I think you're already on the subject, actually, because you know, as you said, the abuse, human rights abuses on the border, the lack of due process, the abuse of asylum seekers, particularly children, it is an impeachable offense, a criminal defense that if it was done to our enemies in a time of war, Trump would be a war criminal. As it is, he's just, I guess, a common criminal. And I'm very concerned about this. I'm particularly concerned that we don't know the numbers. We don't know what's going on. And like the other speakers before me, I really want to see people held accountable. You're on the subcommittee for immigration and security, Homeland Security, right?
No,
So-
I'm the vice chair of the immigration subcommittee.
Immigration subcommittee. How do your colleagues on that committee view this? Do people agree with you that these abuses are an impeachable offense?
Yes.
Are we?
Yes.
Anyway.
Yeah, they do, and you know, we have really supportive colleagues. So Lofgren is great, Chairman Nadler is fantastic. I had actually texted Chairman Nadler on Thursday and said, we need to open an investigation into the deaths of these 5 children. And he didn't even blink. He immediately texted me back. I sent him the article, and I said, 5 kids have died since December. He said, absolutely, let's start it tomorrow. And so we called for the investigation the next day. The challenge is accountability. And that's why I think we have to tie it to a stick, and the stick has to be money. And, you know, reducing the DHS budget is becoming like trying to reduce the military budget. People feel like somehow you're not being patriotic or you don't care about national security. It matters to care about national security in a way that utilizes taxpayer dollars effectively. Why are we giving all this money to private contractors who then jail children? How is that effective use of our dollars, our taxpayer dollars, your taxpayer dollars? So that's what we're working on. We're working on it, but we have a little bit more work to do. A lot of people don't understand the detention system. They don't understand that seeking asylum is legal and actually supported by international human rights law and domestic law, and that anybody can come and seek asylum. That the metering process that we're doing now, the only crisis we have in immigration is crises that the president has manufactured by repealing DACA, by limiting asylum seekers, all in favor of a vanity wall that's not going to do anything. So we have a lot of work to do, but I'm on that one.
Yes. I'm a person that's rather impatient, so my question relates to why Attorney General Barr was committed as far as contempt in your committee, and yet we have not seen the House hold a vote on that contempt citation that your committee issued.
Yeah.
And I think that, in fact, a lot of these issues, we continue to hear about the inherent power that the House has with regard to these people that have refused to testify under subpoena. And yet, we see week in and week out, nothing has been done to bring that issue and challenge those people with the power that the House has.
Yeah, thank you. I think there are a lot of impatient people in this room and in this district, and certainly on this stage. You will see contempt citations being voted on in the next couple of weeks. The reason that we were waiting is honestly because we had so many of them. And so rather than disrupting the process every single day or every couple of days and doing this, I think what you will see is that perhaps we will be voting on them as a group. And so I think you'll see that coming. So hold on, stay strong, we're with you, and you will see that happening. For those who don't know, inherent contempt is a power that we have. We can actually lock people up. And it has not been done in a very, very long time, in some cases ever. So, we're working through some of what do these powers actually mean. We never thought we'd have to use them. And so I do believe that there is real discussion about using the inherent contempt powers and just figuring out exactly what that looks like. Thank you.
Thanks so much for bringing UW climate scientist Dr. Graumlich to the State of the Union
Yes.
with you. Next week, I'll be in D.C. with 1,500 of my friends from Citizens Climate Lobby to ask Congress to put a price on carbon. What are your thoughts on pricing carbon to reduce greenhouse gases and help stop the climate emergency?
Well, I thank you for that, and she was fantastic, by the way. Dean Graumlich was a great guest to bring to State of the Union, and we're so proud of the University of Washington for the work that you're doing on climate. And we're advocating, by the way, I think I got a significant amount of money into the appropriations budget for NOAA, for climate resilience, a lot of the work that you're doing here that's important for the UW. So I was a lead sponsor of the 100 by 50 bill last year. I have not reintroduced that bill yet, in part because there's so much happening now with the Green New Deal, which I have also co-sponsored, to really figure out what is the right set of climate legislation that we need to put forward. There's no question to me that we have got to have a response that matches the scale of the crisis. And I think there are some concerns around carbon pricing in terms of equity. And so I want to figure out how to put together the best proposal that makes sure that whatever we price, we make sure we're addressing the equity issues. And I think that the 1631 ballot initiative, which I supported and worked for on the campaign side, was an attempt to really make sure that frontline communities were at the front and center of any solution, and that includes a just transition for workers. So these are all, I don't think it can be just one piece around putting a price on carbon. I think you got to address the whole picture, and you've got to figure out how to increase the investments into our electric grid, and have a solution that really addresses frontline communities, which includes the coal mine workers and others who are really burdened by these fossil fuel industries. None of that happens unless we get money out of politics. I don't take any corporate PAC money. And we have got to figure out how we get money out of politics. That's why H.R. 1 was so important, our For the People bill. Because a lot of people are just continuing to say, well, we're not going to do anything about this because we're getting money from the fossil fuel companies. So this is a huge issue, and we're mapping out right now in our office. Liliana, wherever she is doing that for us. She is mapping out for us all the bills on climate. Which ones do we think, how do we group them? Which ones do we think we can actually push for and get something done? How do we build it in, infrastructure and resilience into our existing bills, whether it's transportation and really moving to green infrastructure and things like that? How do we put disaster relief money in Puerto Rico to work while we rebuild that infrastructure in a green way and serve the people of Puerto Rico instead of acting like they don't belong? So these are all pieces of what we have to do, and I think I'm on board. I have a comprehensive bill. I'm trying to figure out if I want to introduce that again or if I want to do something different. But it's a top priority for me, and we're continuing to work on it in every way we can. Thank you.
Hello, Representative Jayapal. Thanks for all you're doing. It's really great to see you here today. The issues of human rights and justice and immigration and creating a better society are incredibly important, and it's reassuring to see you leading on many of those fronts. I'm going to just reinforce what the prior questioner had asked about, so I'm sorry to hit you with all the climate questions, boom, boom, boom.
It's all good.
But I did want to say that in the arc of history, we are probably facing one of the most serious threats to our future and our children's future that we've ever faced. That's what the scientists tell us. And we've had many decades of inaction on this issue. And so I wanted to just ask about accelerating solutions. I know there's a lot to consider, and it may not be in the committees that you're involved with, but what can we do to try to accelerate progress on climate so that we'll have the time and the common home that's healthy enough to address all these other issues as well?
Thank you so much. It is such an important issue, and it really, I think it is an existential issue, as you said, not just for those of us here in the United States, but for people around the world who are literally seeing their countries sink. Jakarta, I just tweeted out that article a couple weeks ago about Jakarta, which I lived in for 12 years growing up, is moving the capital because it is sinking. And so we literally are watching these entire populations be decimated. And I think because of sea level rise and other things. And so I think that it's another place where we just have to organize. And we have to get, the climate caucus is sort of stalled because you can't add a Democrat unless you can find a Republican. And no Republicans will agree to be on the climate caucus. So we get the same 8 people every time. And then those of us who want to join, supposed to be a bipartisan caucus, can't join because there's no Republican that we can get on board. So we really do need to organize in districts across the country, not just in the ones where you have a representative who's with you, but we need to put pressure on our Republican colleagues to move things forward. But we also need to demand, look, I don't think that passing bills in the House that we know the Senate is not going to pass is a bad thing, because I think it shows what our vision is. And I think we have to be willing as a Democratic Party not only to be an opposition party, which we were in the minority, but also to be a proposition party. We should put forward a bill that reflects our vision on climate, and Democrats should pass it. So that's what I'm working on and trying to figure out how we get there, but we don't quite have everything we need on that right now. And so that's going to take organizing. And thank you for the work you're doing. We really, really appreciate it.
Hi, thank you for being here.
Yeah.
I call your office frequently. It's one way I deal with my own
You
feelings
and
of helplessness.
145,000
Yes.
others.
I really
Thank you
appreciate
for
you
that.
being here. I'm going to talk about impeachment again. You mentioned earlier, how would we rewrite the Constitution if we knew that someone like Trump would be elected? I would put an impeachment clause in there, and it's already in there. So I would use it, and I feel that Speaker Pelosi's messaging is actually very counterproductive. I think her statement that we can't move forward unless there's bipartisan support basically gives the GOP the power to prevent anyone from moving forward. They know they don't have to do anything. And I think it also signals political fear that emboldens Trump to continue or accelerate his abuse of power to protect his own position in the next election. And so I'm just very concerned about those things, and I would like Speaker Pelosi to get a different message.
Well, let me deliver that message to her. No, look, I think that this is about the Constitution. It does ultimately, you understand, it has to go, for impeachment to be successful, it has to go through the Senate, right? That's not just a made-up thing. Like, it's not like we're looking for bipartisan support in the House, because we could do it on our own if the whole caucus was there, which I will tell you it's not currently there. Perhaps you know that. But ultimately, it does need to go to the Senate. The question is, what allows the country to see what the people in this room see? And that is a public education process. And to me, an impeachment inquiry allows us to do that public education, right? And to put it out there so that people actually can see and engage with what is happening. And at the end of the day, I do think that if Trump thinks we're not going to impeach him, he's going to do worse and worse things. He's going to go bomb Iran. He's going to, whatever. I mean, if there's no accountability, then he is going to continue to escalate. And you're seeing some of that happening now, claiming absolute immunity and absolute executive privilege so that saying he's not going to comply with anything that Congress is doing. We need you to talk to people that you know. How many of you have friends and family that have different political persuasion than you do? Have you spoken to them about this issue? Have you told them what is at stake for us? Do they live in districts? How many of you have friends and family who live in districts that are either represented by a conservative Democrat who may not have come out for impeachment or a Republican? Do you make this the topic of conversation? Because you can talk to me, and here I am, 14 town halls later. But we need you to organize in other places. And we need to bring the strength of the Constitution and the responsibility that we have to those other places. And so that is very, very important. Now, we are doing the work on the inside, and I'm not going to go into all of the detail around that, but we are doing the work on the inside to figure out how we move forward. And I will tell you, the Democratic caucus is united on holding the president accountable. The question of how is where there are some differences, and timing and strategy. And for me, this is our Constitution we're talking about. And so you've got me, but go talk to your friends and family and get them calling their representatives. Really, I mean it. Like, how many of us do not, I see my husband standing in the background, we have relatives who are absolutely on the other side about as far as you can get. And that's his responsibility to talk to them, because that is my beautiful husband, by the way, in the back. But really, I'm like, your people, you go talk to them. But we need to do that. We really do. Let's not just talk to our own echo chambers. Let's talk to the people that don't agree with us.
Okay, I'm Jay Lee, a postdoc at UW and a member of Union for Academic Workers. You mentioned that right now the more a year-long negotiation and bargaining for getting our first contract for postdocs with the UW administration was going on. Actually, it just ended and we won the first contract. Yes. And
Yes.
I want to express our greatest appreciation on your persistent support in collective action for equitable working and learning environment. And we have the strongest language in sexual harassment and discrimination protection.
Wow.
And we are protection for international postdocs as well. And we have over the NIH guideline wages. That was a major win, so please keep up with the great work and keep taking bold steps so we can work together to get more victories and more organizations.
Oh, that is fantastic. That is just fantastic. I just want to say to all the postdocs who have been organizing around this and to the administration that came to the table, this is fantastic news. When workers organize, everyone does better. When we have collective bargaining agreements that protect the rights of workers, everyone does better. So what you have done is not only important for the postdocs here at the University of Washington, it's important for our whole community. So thank you so much and congratulations.
Hi there, I'm Liz, and I'm a student at CLU, and I'm the president of the Digital Arts and Technology Club, and I serve student government. So I just want to say thank you.
So not busy at all.
No, not at all. So I'm very personally grateful to see you here, you know, being from a very small pool in those spaces. So thank you, you inspire me.
Thank you.
And, you know, as an Indigenous Polynesian student, like, I feel like not only am I Indigenous, but we all are humans, and like, we don't do anything now about climate change, like, we will cease to exist. Anyways, so my question, I wanted to ask you, I wanted to tackle on big data. So the US Department of Veteran Affairs partnered with DeepMind, which is owned by Google, and they gave 700,000 medical records to DeepMind for AI research. How do we tackle on or regulate this? How do we protect privacy of us, the people? And is this a HIPAA violation? And because like the law has had a very hard time catching up, especially because they have such an attachment to things that are tangible. And these emerging powers with technology, it's a power, and it's, you know, it's paving the way for us. And like, I want to reach those voices who this technology is affecting the most.
Yeah, thank you so much for everything you do, and thank you for the question on privacy and technology. I think one of the most critical issues, I mean, we're talking about a lot of critical issues, but this is really, really important. I'm on the antitrust subcommittee. We do hope to bring some of these tech companies before us in a slightly different context, but we have had some hearings within judiciary on regulation. I think we need to regulate these tech companies, and I use Google, I use Facebook, the whole thing, but we have got to regulate, and some of them are saying regulate us. Not all of them, but some of them are saying that. If you look at the European Union, very different set of regulations in the EU than we have in the United States. And so I think this is our job. And, you know, honestly, it's, you know, not everybody really understands in Congress even how to use these technologies because the average age is higher. And so not everybody... I mean, when we had Sundar Pichai testify before us from Google, you know, we had a Republican member of Congress holding up his iPhone saying, this device does blah, blah, blah. And Mr. Pichai said, he's the CEO of Google, he said, sir, we don't make that device. Like, that's not our product, you know? So we just have some work to do to educate people, and I am afraid that we are... Yeah, I mean, I really think that this is a huge issue. So we're working with a number of different groups on judiciary and hoping to try to address it and bring some accountability in. But we have to start regulating. We have to do our job as government. Let me know how I can. Okay. All right. Well, let me just first of all ask you to thank Professor Godoy for helping us tonight and for all of the work that she does. We're so grateful to you. And then let me just end by saying thank you so much for coming, for your questions, for your engagement, for your passion, for all of the work that you do every day. And thank you and good night. Appreciate it. All right, take care.